Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you here on the first Sunday of the new year, worshiping our amazing God. Also, welcome those who are watching online. We are glad you're connecting in wherever you are in this moment. And so for today, as Kelly said earlier in the announcements, we'll be reading from Matthew's Gospel, the second chapter, verses 1 through 12. So I invite you to stand as you are able in body or spirit for the reading of the gospel message. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him, and calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea. For it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they heard the king, they set out, and from there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This is the word of God for the people of God. You may be seated. Well, I don't know about you, but usually that time period of like the New Year's happened, but not everybody's back yet in school and work. I try to find some time and watch some movies on TV because that's probably the limited window that I have for the year that I can sit down, veg out, and watch a movie. Well, the other night, my wife and I were watching a movie that was really good, but it was a good story, but it had an interesting theme with it too. See, the story started out with a young man who was 19 living at home with his single mother. And like a lot of 19-year-olds, he wasn't very motivated to get out there and do something, so he was at home a lot playing video games and not helping out around the house and pulling his own weight. So finally, his mother had enough and said, "You've got to go and get a job, okay? You've got to go. If you're not going to go to school, you then got to go get a job and start helping out around the house instead of just playing video games all day in your room." So he begrudgingly went out and started looking for a job. And he landed at this place that was an athletic supplier that sold athletic goods. And he found this job opening, and so he was sitting in the lobby to fill out the paperwork, and an older gentleman walked by him and introduced himself, started talking to the young man, and the young man was just looking at the ground, wasn't looking the man in the eyes, wasn't really giving him the attention. And he comes to find out the older gentleman that was walking through the lobby while this young man was trying to get a job was the president of the company, as it turned out to be. And so eventually the president of the company told the young man to come back and meet with him, and then that they'll talk about the job and what it entails, and that he needs to come early for his shift. Well, of course, you can realize he goes home, tells his mother, she's excited. He goes home, and guess what happens on his first day where he's supposed to meet the president early for his first day work? He oversleeps, right? Like any other 19-year-old would. Oversleeps. And he gets to his job, and he was going to be working in the back of the warehouse doing all the packaging, and everybody's frustrated with him because they had to pull this guy's weight around until he got there. The president of the company said, "Well, I had breakfast waiting for you before we had your shift, but it's cold. You can have it." But eventually, what happens throughout the story and what you come to learn, the president was on a mission. He usually takes young people and mentors them into Christian young men. And one of the things that the president of the company told this younger guy, he said, "Hey, when you first met me, I was not impressed. And first impressions matter. And so when someone comes up to you and shakes your hand, you look them in the eye and tell them who you are, own who you are, and make sure that they have a good impression of you as they walk away because they know who you are. And so things like this kind of molded and shaped the young man to come out to be a really great individual that contributed to his mom's household, contributed to their company. But making first impressions was big. And so in today's story that we have about the wise men coming from the east, coming to meet baby Jesus, was God's first impression unto the world. This was God's way of introducing who he is to the world. A world that is full of uncertainty, full of fear and lies. This is his way of coming to us and saying, hey guys, I'm your God. And he did so in a way that many of us would not have expected that the creator of the world would have introduced himself to his creation. And so today is Epiphany. Well, actually, tomorrow is if you follow the actual church calendar. But we observe it today in our church. It is kind of the last day that you'll see all the Christmas stuff out, okay? So if yours is still out, you're good till tomorrow. But then it's kind of time to put it up, all right? Because the king cakes are coming out, which I'm really excited about, and all that fun stuff that comes with the season of Epiphany. But today's the day of Epiphany, okay? And when you look at Epiphany, Epiphany often means revealing, right? Kind of an aha moment. And this is the Epiphany that God incarnate came in flesh and introduced himself to the world. And so that's what we're here looking at today. So what about this time of uncertainty and fear? You know, God, I really do believe, picked this moment in human history to come to the earth for many, many reasons. And I think one main reason is because in the day of the Roman Empire, they had wonderful infrastructure. They had wonderful roads. They said all roads lead to Rome, okay? So they had a great communication method to get the messages out and for things to go. And God coming in this moment was the divine moment to where he knew that his message from that point as baby Jesus would then go out to the whole world. The interesting thing is, after Jesus' resurrection and he left the apostles to go out and make more disciples, when they started sending missionaries from Jerusalem to the British Isles, okay, to those tribes up in the British Isles, guess what? Guess what those missionaries found out when they got there? They already knew about Jesus. How did they know about Jesus? Roman roads, Roman soldiers. They took the story with them. So God came in this moment for the divine moment for everything to just explode, right? But also this time was a time of fear and uncertainty. It could be a time that we often find ourselves in today's time because you had this puppet ruler named Herod that had been appointed by Rome to oversee this region. Now, Rome really didn't care a lot about what you did except for a couple of things. And if you followed these couple of rules, you're good with Rome, right? Like today, you got to pay your taxes, all right? Rome cared a lot about that. So you got to make sure you conquered people, you got to pay Rome taxes. And then the other thing is, hey, don't start a rebellion. That was it. You can continue to do your customs. You could continue to worship who you wanted to worship as long as it didn't interfere with you paying taxes and it didn't lead to a rebellion against Rome. All right? They kind of left you alone. So what Rome did is they appointed Herod, who was really not Jewish. He really wasn't the king of the Jews, but he was a great administrator, a great builder. You know, he worked on the temple. And so the people in this region of Jerusalem respected him, but feared him as well, because he was ruling with a brutal hand. It was said that Caesar said it was better to be one of Herod's pigs than one of his kinfolks, because Herod killed his first wife and first sets of sons out of paranoia. All right? So murder was definitely a tool of his administration. All right? But when we get to this story, in this time of uncertainty, in this time of fear of Rome and fear of Herod, a child is born and a star is noticed. Now, the individuals that recognize the star are called wise men or magi. Now, there's been times that they've been called kings, and that kind of got added on in the medieval ages. But more accurately, they weren't necessarily rulers. They were very wealthy, well respected, but they were mainly astronomers that would study the skies and advise the rulers of what these things meant. And so when they were studying the sky, they saw this particular star appear. Now, keep in mind, this is coming more from like the Persia area, okay, present-day Iran, northern India, and that region. They were not followers of the Hebrew Bible over there, okay? They were not of Jewish descent. So how would they know to look for this star? Well, if you go further back in history, God's people were sent into exile in Babylon. And when they went into Babylon, the rulers there learned a lot about the Hebrew Bible and about Yahweh. And those stories stuck. They remembered those stories. And so these magi were very educated on world religions and faiths, very well educated with astronomy, and knew that in the book of Numbers, it talks about, hey, when the time comes, there will be a star in the sky. And they knew to find that star and follow it. Now, when they followed this star, it took them some time, okay? It took them some time. Travel from that region to the Roman world was not easy. Difficult terrain. And these individuals did not pack lightly, okay? And for all you travelers out there, if you don't pack lightly, it just complicates things. When I fly and it's just me, I love to pack everything in a carry-on so that I don't have to worry about checking my luggage and carrying all throughout the airport, right? These people did not pack lightly. They brought animals with them. They brought an entourage of people with them. It wasn't just three lowly men that you see right here. By the way, they only appear on this Epiphany Sunday. They weren't here during Advent. But they appear, not just them, but a whole large group. And they're bringing with them treasures. Even Scripture said they opened their treasure chest. Okay? It was quite the scene. And so they would travel, and it would take some time. Many commentators will say baby Jesus was probably a toddler when they finally made it, all right, to Jerusalem. And the Magi, when they got there, they went to Jerusalem, the capital where the temple is, because in their mind, they thought, well, that's where their Messiah is going to come. They're going to come to the temple and to Jerusalem. But see, when they got there, Herod was surprised that they were there with all of their stuff and treasure chests to pay homage to a king that wasn't him. I can tell you one thing, kings don't like to know that there are other potential kings and heirs to the throne, right? And so he, remember, uses murder as an administrative tool, said, hey, okay, great. Why don't you go find where he is, or go to where he is, and let me know exactly where he is, and I'll come and pay him homage too, right? But that was a lie. That was a lie. As we continue to read on, Herod ruled with murder and had the children ages 2 and under killed in the whole region because he wanted to wipe out any potential threat to his rule. Also, he didn't want Rome to think that he couldn't keep control of his designated region, because if he can't, Rome's going to boot him out and put somebody else in, right? So he called together the chief priests. He called together everybody that's smart and knows the Hebrew Bible and said, hey, where's the Messiah supposed to come? I'm like, oh, yeah, in Micah 5, it says he's supposed to be in Bethlehem. Oh, so they go to Bethlehem. And when they get there, they come upon this very, very humble scene. Very, very humble scene. You know, it will probably be quite the surprise, right? Imagine yourself being Mary. Mary's young. She's probably not even 20 still at this point, all right? But she's young, a young mother. Toddler Jesus is running around. Doesn't say Joseph is there. He's probably working or doing whatever. So it's just the two of them. And here comes this huge entourage knocking at your door saying, hey, we're here to see the Messiah. I mean, it would be the The closest equivalent is if the president was coming to your house with his entourage of vehicles and Secret Service and whatever, knocking at your door to come see your kid to pay him respect. It's a big deal. It was huge. And I'm sure Mary was kind of taken aback a little bit of seeing this whole group coming in with treasure chests to pay homage to her son, Jesus. And so when they get there, they open their treasure chests, and the gifts that they give have some significance. They have purpose and meaning and reason behind it, both symbolically and practically as well. You see, Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, the audience that was written for was going to be Jewish in background. A lot of your Gospels have intended audiences. Luke was more to a Gentile audience, but Matthew was writing to people who knew the Hebrew Bible. And so he highlighted the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Frankincense has been referenced before in the Old Testament. It has purposes. They knew myrrh was used as part of the burial process. Gold is gold, right? So they all had symbolism and explanations of Jesus' ministry, but they also had a practical application as well. And this is very different from, how we welcome babies today, right? We have a baby shower, everybody brings gifts, but there's every now and then that gift, if you've ever had a baby shower, that you get that you're realizing, I don't know what this is for, and they're like, you'll know when you know, right? These gifts, while we know the symbolism and the connection to Scripture and what they mean, but they also had a very, very practical purpose as well. Because very soon, the government and their soldiers are going to be coming for Mary and her child. Imagine how that would feel, how scary that would be if you knew that your government was coming after you and your child, and you had to get out. Right? And so these have practical reasons. These have practical reasons because God knew that they would need these when they go into exile. Because when the wise men heard in their dreams, hey, don't go back to Herod, go another way, God knew that Jesus has got to get out. And so Jesus' family got the same message. And so they packed up what they could. They packed up their clothing. They packed up their gold, their frankincense, and their myrrh, and they left for Egypt. Because their government, Herod, and his troops were coming for Jesus. And so those items were expensive items that could be sold in Egypt's markets for money. And it could be used to support your family in exile. So just like that baby shower gift, if you're a parent, you got, I don't know when I'm going to need this for until you do. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh would have taken care of Jesus' family if it was sold in the marketplaces while they were in exile. God knew. Even in our lifetime, what this says to us is that even in our lifetime, when we are hearing the lies of evil in our lives, we are scared to death of what might happen, just hold on to the fact that God is with you and that you may not see him working in the midst of all this fear, but he will make something good out of it. It may just be totally unexpected in a way that you didn't think about. Paul says that in Romans 8, for God works for the good for those that love him. So we have to be careful in our lives to not listen to the lies of the devil, to live into the fear, because that's not what God wants us to do. He wants us to lean into him and have faith that he will provide a way even though we may not see it. But this is an important message for us all, because many of the chief priests and scribes thought that when the Messiah was going to come, that he was going to come to Jerusalem, he was going to be there for the Jewish people only, and that he was going to lead them back to the promised land and kick out Rome in a big old military fight. But no, that was not how God planned his first impression to be for us. He came to a couple who you would have thought that would never be the ones to be chosen, right? A virgin to carry the Christ child who was not yet married. Comes from humble backgrounds, right? Born in a manger, which is used to feed animals, and then growing up as a child in a dangerous world where their government wants to take them out, where they are forced to go into exile. But yet he presented himself to Gentile magi, not to just the Jewish people, but to the whole world. And so the message for Epiphany and the big revelation and the first impression is that God is here for everybody. Everybody. Not just folks that look and act like you and me, but for folks that act differently and look differently than us. It's for the whole world. And that was his first impression, was this: hey, guess what? Here I am, Gentile magi. Not here I am, chief priest. In humble ways, in a way that we would not have expected. But our salvation came to us in that way. It's how God chose it, because he wanted to send a clear first impression and message of who he is. Even in fear, he is the truth. He is the one for everybody. You know, in Sunday school class today, I talked a little bit about how we are all, as Christians, ambassadors of Christ. I like that. I like that imagery and what that means, that symbolism. Because, you know, as an ambassador in today's world, in the secular world, it's a government position, right? Usually given to distinguished people to live in fancy embassies overseas to represent the American people, right? These are people who have prestige. These are people who have had great achievements, that are loyal to the commander-in-chief, and that will represent our nation well, right? That's what an ambassador is. You're an ambassador of Christ. So if you're sitting by somebody one day in a lobby room waiting, and they ask you what you do, you can tell them what you do. You can tell them your job or where you live and all that. Or you can tell them this, which I think is a cool thing to tell them. You can say that I work with an international organization. It's nonprofit. It has members, millions, billions of members around the globe that I'm a part of. And our main mission is to make sure that people know that they are loved and that everybody is welcome to be part of our international organization. Everybody. And they're going to probably say, oh, cool. What's that? What is it? Well, I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Christ. I'm his ambassador. And so as his ambassadors, we need to reflect this message that God came for the whole world. So that means you need to be sharing the gospel message and the good news to everybody. Not just the ones you like, but everybody. Because that's what he did for us. And he ultimately gave his life for us, the imperfect us that we are, so that we don't have to listen to the fear, that we can know the truth, that we are valued and we are loved, and we are to share that message. So in just a moment, on this Epiphany Sunday, we will be taking communion. And that's the one thing I love about communion, is that in the United Methodist Church, this is an open table for all, just as God came for all. And that if you're just willing to receive, that's the only requirement, is that if you're willing to receive. And so what more the fitting way to close out our service in time of communion, to reflect upon this gift that God gives us in Jesus Christ and how he came to the world, and how we are to do the same thing and share that love to the whole world. And so may we be more in tuned and focused to God's love in our life. May we not let fear tell us the narrative. Because God's first impression in the midst of fear was, I love you and I love everyone.